When socialite Grant Whitmore is left at the altar, the last person he expects to find solace in is his quiet housekeeper, Ariel Vaughan. But as whispers of scandal swirl and hearts slowly mend, a forbidden connection blooms, until a secret threatens to tear it all apart. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The Charleston air hung heavy with disappointment as the guests at the Whitmore-Lancaster wedding began to whisper among themselves. It had been 2 hours since Vanessa Lancaster was supposed to walk down the aisle, and the empty seat beside Grant Whitmore at the altar told the whole story. Grant stood in a small room off the main chapel, his tall frame rigid with tension. His best man Derek handed him another glass of whiskey. "She's not coming, is she?" Grant asked, his voice hollow. Derek looked at his childhood friend, the golden boy of Charleston society, now with his perfectly tailored tuxedo looking suddenly too big for his shoulders. "Her mother just confirmed it. Vanessa left a note. She's gone to Europe with that photographer from the engagement shoot." Grant downed the whiskey in one gulp. The burning in his throat was nothing compared to the humiliation coursing through his veins. 300 guests, the governor, 2 senators, all the society pages. Everyone who mattered in Southern business circles had come to see Grant Whitmore, heir to Whitmore Industries, marry the perfect socialite, and she'd left him standing there like a fool. "I'll make the announcement," his father said, appearing. In the doorway, his disappointment barely concealed behind a mask of Southern propriety. When Grant finally emerged from the room, he walked straight past the chapel, past the pitying glances and the not-so-subtle phone cameras capturing his shame. He slid into his silver Bentley and drove away from the Charleston Grand Hotel, tires squealing against the pavement. 3 weeks later, the Grand Whitmore estate outside Charleston was quiet as a tomb. Grant had retreated there after cancelling his honeymoon and taking an indefinite leave from the family business. The Georgian mansion with its sweeping verandas and manicured gardens had become his fortress of solitude. Inside, Ariel Vaughan pushed her cleaning cart down the long hallway, her movements calm and methodical. At 27, she'd been working for the Whitmore family for nearly 5 years, but the last 3 weeks had been different. The house, once alive with preparations for the wedding, now felt like a mausoleum. She paused outside Grant's study, hearing nothing but silence from within. Gently, she knocked. "Mr. Whitmore, I was wondering if you'd like me to bring your coffee now or later." No response came, but she was used to that. Carefully, she opened the door to find Grant sitting at his desk, staring out the window at the sprawling oak trees that lined the property. He didn't turn when she entered. "I'll just leave it here then," she said softly, placing the coffee on his desk. She'd learned how he liked it. Strong, with just a touch of cream, no sugar. As she turned to leave, his voice stopped her. "They're all calling, you know, the board members, my parents. They want me back at work." His voice was flat, emotionless, as if nothing happened. Ariel paused, unsure if she should respond. This was the most he'd spoken in days. "Sometimes people don't know what to say when bad things happen," she offered quietly. "They think moving forward means forgetting." Grant finally turned to look at her. His once vibrant blue eyes seemed duller now, surrounded by dark circles from sleepless nights. "And what do you think, Ariel?" She was surprised he remembered her name. Most of the wealthy families she'd worked for over the years barely registered her existence. "I think moving forward and forgetting are different things," she said simply. "One's necessary, the other's impossible." A flicker of something, surprise perhaps, crossed his face before he turned back to the window. "Thank you for the coffee." It was a dismissal, but a polite one. Ariel nodded and slipped out of the room, returning to her work. Days turned into weeks. Grant's parents visited occasionally, his mother's voice carrying through the halls as she urged him to snap out of it, and his father reminding him that Whitmores don't wallow. They never stayed long. Friends called less and less. The house. Staff walked on eggshells except for Ariel. She continued her work quietly, efficiently, occasionally humming old gospel songs her grandmother had taught her. She didn't force conversation, didn't give him pitying looks, didn't ask when he'd be returning to his normal life. One evening, as a summer storm rolled in across the marshland surrounding the estate, Ariel was finishing her shift when thunder shook the windows. The power flickered once, twice, then went out completely. She found emergency candles in the kitchen and lit a few, planning to leave them for Grant before heading to her small apartment above the garage. Walking through the darkened house, she noticed a sliver of dim light coming from the drawing room. Inside, Grant sat in an armchair, a glass of whiskey in hand, a single battery-powered lamp casting long shadows across his face. He looked up when she entered, his expression unreadable in the half-light. "I brought some candles," she said, placing them on a side table. "Thank you," he replied. Then after a pause, "You don't have to rush off." Ariel hesitated, then sat, in a chair across from him. They sat in silence as rain lashed against the windows and thunder rumbled overhead. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It felt like a shared understanding, a momentary truce with the expectations of the outside world. "Do you ever feel like your life was supposed to be something else?" Grant asked suddenly, staring into his glass. "Like everyone had this picture of who you were, and you tried to fit it, but then something happens that shows it was all just for show," she finished quietly. He looked up, surprised. "I wanted to be a singer once," she continued, a small smile playing on her lips. "My mama spent good money on piano lessons for me. Everyone in church said I had a gift." "What happened?" "Life," she shrugged. "Mama got sick. Medical bills piled up. I needed steady work more than I needed dreams." Grant studied her face in the candlelight. It struck him that he'd never really looked at her before. Her warm brown eyes, the gentle curve of her cheeks, the way her hands folded neatly in her lap. "Do you regret it?" he asked. "Sometimes," she admitted. "But then I think about how Mama got the care she needed, how she didn't have to worry at the end. That's worth more than any stage." They talked until the storm passed and the lights flickered. Back on. For the first time since the wedding disaster, Grant felt something other than numbness or shame. It wasn't happiness, not quite, but it was something. The next morning, when Ariel arrived for work, she found a brand new portable record player in the kitchen with a note, "For your humming." "The house has been too quiet," she smiled, touching the note gently before tucking it into her pocket. Over the following weeks, small changes began to appear. Grant emerged from his study more often. Sometimes he'd be in the kitchen when she arrived, making his own coffee. Other times she'd find him on the veranda reading a book or working on his laptop. One afternoon, as Ariel dusted the library shelves, softly singing to herself, she turned to find Grant watching her from the doorway. "Sorry," she said, embarrassed. "I didn't realize you were there." "Don't apologize," he said. "You have a beautiful voice. What was that song?" "Just an old one my grandmother taught me. Nothing fancy." Grant stepped further into the room. "Were you close with her? Your grandmother?" Ariel nodded, surprised by his interest. "She raised me after my mama passed, taught me everything important, cooking, singing, how to stand tall in a world that wants to make you small." "She sounds wise." "The wisest," Ariel smiled. "What about you? Were you close with your grandparents?" Something softened in Grant's expression. "My grandfather, yes. He built Whitmore Industries from nothing. Everyone saw the success, the wealth, but I saw how he sat with every employee who ever had a problem, knew all their children's names." His voice grew quieter. "I think he'd be disappointed in who I've become." "I doubt that," Ariel said gently. "Grief changes people, but it doesn't diminish them." Their eyes met, and for a moment the air between them seemed to shift, a subtle change like the first hint of seasons turning. That night, for the first time in months, Grant took out his leather journal. Before the wedding disaster, he'd written in it daily, thoughts, poems, observations about the world. Now, after staring at the blank page for nearly an hour, he began to write. "She hums when she thinks no one is listening. Songs I don't recognize but somehow make this empty house feel less hollow. How strange that the person who sees me most clearly is the one I barely noticed before." The next morning, Grant's parents arrived unannounced. Eleanor Whitmore swept through the front door in a cloud of expensive perfume, her husband Richard following with a stern expression. "Enough is enough, Grant," Eleanor declared, finding him in the sunroom. "It's been 2 months. Vanessa made a fool of herself, not you. The board needs you back. Your father needs you back." "I'm not ready," Grant said simply. Ready, Richard scoffed. Whitmores aren't ruled by feelings, son. We have responsibilities, traditions. The traditions that had me engaged to a woman who clearly didn't love me, Grant challenged, a spark of his old fire returning. The responsibilities that have me living someone else's version of my life. Eleanor's gaze sharpened. This attitude is exactly what drove Vanessa away. You've always been too sensitive. Too much like your grandfather with his ridiculous notions about what matters in business. The words stung more than Grant wanted to admit. He noticed Ariel passing by the doorway with a stack of fresh towels, her eyes downcast, but her shoulders tense. She'd heard everything. I'll think about coming back, he said finally. But on my terms, not yours. After his parents left, Grant found Ariel in the garden, clipping fresh flowers for the dining room table. The August sun made her skin glow, and a few curls had escaped her practical ponytail. I'm sorry about what you heard, he said. My parents can be... They're worried about you, she replied diplomatically, though her eyes told a different story. No, Grant shook his head. They're worried about the company, the family image, not me. Ariel said nothing, but her silence was understanding rather than judgmental. What would you do, he asked suddenly, if you could do anything, be anything? Without worrying about what others think? She looked up at him, surprised by the question. I'd sing again, she admitted. Maybe open a little music school for kids who can't afford lessons. Her cheeks colored slightly. Silly dreams. Not silly, Grant said firmly. Real, honest. He hesitated, then added, would you sing something for me sometime? A full song, not just the humming I catch in hallways? The request hung between them, somehow intimate in the warm garden air. I'd like that, she finally said, a shy smile transforming her face. That evening, after Ariel had gone home to her apartment, Grant wrote in his journal again. The words came easier now, flowing onto the page as he described the way sunlight had caught in her hair, how her voice had a quality that made him want to lean closer to catch every word. He wrote until his hand cramped, filling pages with thoughts. He barely admitted to himself how he found himself listening for her arrival each morning, how the simple kindness in her eyes had become the brightest part of his days. When he finally fell asleep, his dreams weren't haunted by Vanessa or the wedding that never happened. Instead, he dreamed of soft humming and the scent of garden flowers. The next day, Grant made a decision. He called his assistant at Whitmore Industries and arranged to review some files from home. He wasn't ready to return fully, but it was a start. When Ariel arrived, he asked if she'd mind bringing his coffee to the veranda instead of his study. She found him there, laptop open, looking more like the man who had once commanded boardrooms than he had in months. You're working, she observed, setting down his coffee. Trying to, he nodded. I realized something last night. Hiding away isn't honoring my grandfather's legacy. It's betraying it. That sounds like progress, she smiled. It's a beginning, he agreed. That evening, Grant left a note tucked into the laundry Ariel had neatly folded and left in his room. He stared at the words for a long time before placing it there, his heart beating faster than it had in months. The note simply read, You are the only part of this house that makes it feel like home. The next morning, Ariel found the note as she was putting away Grant's laundry. Her hands trembled slightly as she read the words, You are the only part of this house that makes it feel like home. She quickly tucked the note into her pocket when she heard footsteps approaching. Mrs. Peterson, the cook, appeared in the doorway. There you are, Ariel. Mr. Whitmore has asked for breakfast on the veranda this morning. Says he'll be working from home today. Ariel nodded, trying to keep her expression neutral despite the flutter in her chest. I'll make sure everything's set up for him. When she brought out fresh towels to the guest bathroom later that morning, she nearly bumped into Grant in the hallway. For a moment, they both froze, standing closer than they ever had before. She could smell his cologne, subtle and expensive. Good morning, he said, his voice softer than usual. Morning, Mr. Whitmore, she replied, dropping her gaze. Grant, he corrected gently. I think we've known each other long enough for that. Before she could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at it and sighed. The office, I should take this. As he walked away, Ariel let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The note in her pocket seemed to burn against her skin. She wasn't sure what to make of it, or what to do about the warm feeling that spread through her whenever he was near. Later that day, Grant's sister Charlotte arrived, breezing into the house like a hurricane in designer clothes. "Well, well," she said, finding Grant in his study. The prodigal brother emerges from his cave of self-pity. Grant rolled his eyes but smiled. Unlike his parents, Charlotte had always been on his side. "I wouldn't call it emerging, just dipping my toes back into reality." Charlotte flopped onto the leather sofa across from his desk. "Mum says you're being stubborn about returning to work." "Mom thinks anything less than total compliance is stubborn." "True," Charlotte laughed, then her expression softened. "How are you, really?" Grant considered the question. A month ago, he would have given a one-word answer. Surviving. But now, "I'm finding my way," he said finally. "Things are starting to feel possible again." Charlotte studied him curiously. "Something's different about you. There's a light back in your eyes." Before Grant could respond, Ariel knocked lightly on the open door, a tray of iced tea in hand. "Mrs. Peterson thought you might like refreshments," she said. "Perfect timing, thank you." Grant smiled warmly at her. Charlotte didn't miss the way her brother's eyes followed Ariel as she set down the tray and quietly left the room. "Well, well," Charlotte murmured, a knowing smile spreading across her face. "Perhaps I've found the source of that light." "Don't start," Grant warned, but his sister was already sitting up straighter, intrigued. "She's pretty," Charlotte observed, "and clearly not like the social climbers you usually date." "Ariel is an employee, Charlotte, who you're on a first-name basis with," she pointed out. "The Grant I knew 3 months ago barely noticed the staff existed." Grant busied himself, pouring tea. "She's been kind during a difficult time, that's all." Charlotte hummed skeptically. "Whatever you say, brother dear." After Charlotte left, Grant found himself restless. Her teasing comments had hit closer to home than he wanted to admit. Was he being obvious about his growing feelings for Ariel? And if so, what did that mean for both of them? The divide between them wasn't just employer and employee. It was worlds apart. His family's old money and influence, her humble background. How would his parents react, the board members, the society pages that had already had a field day with his failed wedding? More importantly, what would Ariel think? The last thing he wanted was for her to feel pressured or uncomfortable in what was essentially her workplace. That evening, as sunset painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, Grant wandered down to the garden where Ariel was clipping fresh herbs for the kitchen. She had changed out of her work uniform into a simple sundress, her hair loose around her shoulders. "You're still here," he said, surprised. "I thought your shift ended at 5. She looked up, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Mrs. Peterson asked if I'd help with dinner preparations. She's making your favorite, shrimp and grits. You know my favorite foods." A slight blush colored her cheeks. "It's my job to notice things." Grant stepped closer, taking in the gentle curve of her face in the fading light. "And what else have you noticed, Ariel?" Her eyes met his, steady and warm. "That you're starting to live again, not just exist. It suits you." The words hung between them, honest and unadorned. No games, no hidden agendas, so different from what he was used to in his world. "Charlotte thinks," he began, then stopped. Himself. "My sister has some interesting theories about why I'm feeling better these days." "Oh?" Ariel's voice was carefully neutral. Grant's courage faltered. "She thinks I'm finally moving on from Vanessa. It wasn't exactly a lie, but it wasn't the full truth either." Ariel nodded, accepting his words at face value. "That's good," she said simply. "You deserve happiness." As she turned to go back inside, Grant called after her, Would you like to stay for dinner? Not as staff, but as a guest?" The invitation surprised them both. Ariel hesitated, her expression unreadable. "I don't think that would be appropriate, Mr. Whitmore." "Grant," he corrected again. "Grant," she acknowledged softly. "But my answer's the same. Good night." She disappeared into the house, leaving him standing alone in the garden, the scent of jasmine heavy in the air. Later that night, Grant found himself writing again, his pen moving quickly across the pages of his journal. She turned down dinner, She was right to do so. There are boundaries, invisible lines drawn between people like me and people like her. But when I'm with her, those lines seem meaningless, arbitrary. She sees me, not the Whitmore name, not the family fortune, just me. How rare that is. How precious. The next morning, Grant had meetings in Charleston. For the first time in months, he put on a suit, fixed his tie, and headed into the office. The familiar routine felt strange now, like clothes that no longer quite fit. Board members and executives greeted him with cautious enthusiasm, clearly relieved to have him back, but unsure how to address his absence. No one mentioned Vanessa or the wedding. Instead, they talked about quarterly projections, new acquisitions, market forecasts, as if nothing had changed. By afternoon, Grant felt suffocated by the pretense. He slipped out early, telling his assistant he had another appointment. Instead, he drove to a small music shop in a part of town he rarely visited. The elderly owner looked surprised to see someone in a business suit browsing through vintage records. "Can I help you find something specific?" the man asked. "Old gospel records," Grant replied, "the kind that might have been popular 30, 40 years ago." An hour later, he left with a stack of albums and a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in a long time. When he returned to the estate, Mrs. Peterson informed him that Ariel had called in sick. A strange disappointment settled in his chest. He'd been looking forward to seeing her, to sharing his find. "Did she say what was wrong?" he asked. "Just a migraine," she said. "Should be back tomorrow." Grant nodded, trying not to show his concern. "Send some soup to her apartment, would you? And make sure she has everything she needs." Mrs. Peterson raised an eyebrow, but nodded. "Of course, Mr. Whitmore." That evening, the house felt emptier than usual. Grant realized how accustomed he'd grown to Ariel's presence, her soft humming, her quiet efficiency, the way she brought warmth to even the coldest rooms. He took out his journal again, writing, "By lamplight, as rain began to fall outside, the house feels hollow without her. I never realized how much space she fills with so little noise. Is it wrong to feel this way, to want something more? Society would say so. My parents certainly would. But my grandfather used to say that true happiness comes from following your heart, not your portfolio." The next morning, Grant woke early and made his way to the kitchen before the staff arrived. He prepared a tray with fresh coffee, toast, and a small vase with a single gardenia from the greenhouse. Mrs. Peterson found him there, eyebrows raised in surprise. "Everything all right, Mr. Whitmore?" "Fine," he replied briskly. "Is Ariel coming in today?" "She called to say she's feeling better, should be here by 9. Grant nodded, hiding his relief. "Good, that's good." The older woman gave him a knowing look, but said nothing more. When Ariel arrived, she seemed surprised to find Grant waiting for her in the front hall. "Mr. Whitmore, Grant, you're up early." "I wanted to show you something," he said, trying to sound casual. "If you have a moment." Curious, she followed him to the sunroom, where he'd set up the record player and the stack of albums he'd purchased. "You mentioned your grandmother taught you gospel songs," he explained, suddenly, feeling awkward. "I thought, well, I found these yesterday. Thought maybe some of them might be familiar to you." Ariel looked at the collection, genuine surprise and pleasure lighting up her face. She ran her fingers gently over the album covers. "My grandmother had this one," she said softly, picking up a worn record. "She used to play it on Sunday mornings while making breakfast." Grant watched her, memorizing the way her eyes crinkled at the corners when she smiled. "Would you play it? And maybe sing along? If you want to, that is." Ariel hesitated. "I haven't sung properly in a long time. I'd still like to hear it." Their eyes met, and something passed between them. A shared vulnerability, a growing trust. "All right," she said finally, "but don't expect anything fancy." She carefully placed the record on the turntable, and the scratchy opening notes filled the sunroom. Ariel closed her eyes, swaying slightly to the familiar melody. When she began to sing, her voice was soft at first, then gained strength, rich, soulful, and filled with a depth of feeling that took Grant's breath away. He watched her, transfixed, as she lost herself in the music. This wasn't the reserved, professional Ariel who moved quietly through his house. This was a woman with passion, with dreams, with a gift that had been set aside but never truly forgotten. When the song ended, Ariel opened her eyes to find Grant staring at her with undisguised admiration. "That was beautiful," he said simply. She looked away, suddenly self-conscious. "Thank you for this. It's been a long time since I've heard these songs." "Why did you stop singing?" Grant asked gently. "You have an incredible voice." Ariel shrugged, but the gesture couldn't mask the sadness in her eyes. "Life doesn't always go the way we plan. After Mama died, there were bills to pay. Singing doesn't keep the lights on, but it lights something inside you," Grant observed. "I could see it." She met his gaze, allowing him to see a glimpse of the dreams she usually kept hidden. "Maybe someday," she said softly, "when the time is right." The moment was interrupted by the ringing of Grant's phone. He glanced at it with annoyance. His father calling. "I should get back to work," Ariel said quickly, professional distance returning to her voice. "Thank you again for the records." As she turned to leave, Grant made a sudden decision. "Ariel, wait. There's a charity gala for the Children's Hospital this weekend. My family hosts it every year at the country club. Would you want to go with me?" The invitation hung in the air between them, changing everything. Ariel's eyes widened with surprise. "As your date?" she asked carefully. "As my guest," Grant clarified, though in his heart he wanted more. "Though I'd understand if you'd rather not." Ariel twisted her hands together, conflict evident on her face. "People would talk, your family, let them talk," Grant said with sudden conviction. "I've spent too long worrying about what people think." For a long moment, Ariel was silent, considering. Then, with a small smile that made Grant's heart skip, she nodded. "Yes," she said softly. "I'd like that." The phone continued to ring, but Grant barely noticed. All he could see was Ariel's smile. All he could hear was her yes. And all he could think was that for the first time in months, he was looking forward to tomorrow. Later that day, he wrote in his journal, "She said yes. She'll come to the gala. I'll need to tell my parents, face their disapproval, weather the gossip. But none of that matters when I think of seeing her there, of introducing her not as my employee but as someone who matters to me. Because she does matter, more than I've been willing to admit even to myself. She's awakened something I thought died when Vanessa left me at the altar. But maybe that wasn't the end. Maybe it was making room for a beginning." That night, as Ariel walked back to her apartment above the garage, she saw the light on in Grant's study. She paused, looking up at the window, and allowed herself to wonder, just for a moment, if this fragile, unexpected thing growing between them might actually have a chance. She touched the pocket where she kept his note, the words now committed. "To memory, you are the only part of this house that makes it feel like home." With a mixture of hope and fear, she whispered to the night air, "What are we doing, Grant Whitmore?" Only the cricket song answered her as she climbed the stairs to her apartment, where she would spend the night alternating between excitement and doubt about the gala that would soon change everything between them. The annual Whitmore Children's Hospital Gala was the highlight of Charleston's social calendar. For decades, the city's elite had gathered in their finest attire to raise money for sick children and, perhaps more importantly, to see and be seen. In her small apartment above the garage, Ariel stared at her closet with growing panic. She had exactly one dress that might be appropriate, a navy blue cocktail dress she'd worn to her cousin's wedding last year. It was pretty enough, but nothing like the designer gowns that would fill the ballroom of the Charleston Country Club. Her phone chimed with a text message from Grant. "Car will pick you up at 7. Looking forward to tonight." Ariel's stomach fluttered with a mixture of excitement and dread. What was she thinking, agreeing to this? She didn't belong in Grant's world of champagne and chandeliers. She belonged behind the scenes, invisible. A knock at her door startled her. She opened it to find Charlotte Whitmore standing there, holding several garment bags. "Oh good, you're home." Charlotte breezed past Ariel into the apartment. "We don't have much time." "Miss Whitmore, what are you—" "Charlotte, please," she corrected, laying the garment bags on Ariel's bed. "And I'm here because my brother may be brilliant in business, but he's clueless about the minefield he's walking you into tonight." She unzipped one of the bags, revealing a stunning emerald green gown. "You'll need armor." Ariel touched the silky fabric cautiously. "I can't accept this." "You can and you will," Charlotte said firmly. "Grant told me he invited you to the gala. Do you have any idea what you're walking into?" Ariel sat down heavily on the edge of the bed. "A mistake, probably." Charlotte's expression softened. "No, not a mistake, but definitely a statement." She sat beside Ariel. "Look, the Charleston elite are sharks, and they smell blood in the water since Vanessa left Grant at the altar. They'll be watching his every move tonight, and they'll be watching you." "Why are you helping me?" Ariel asked. "You barely know me," Charlotte smiled. "Because my brother looks at you the way our grandfather used to look at our grandmother. Like you hang the moon and stars. I haven't seen him this alive in months, maybe years." Ariel felt her cheeks warm. "It's not like that between us." "Maybe." "Not yet," Charlotte winked. "Now try on this dress. I brought a few options." 2 hours later, Ariel barely recognized herself in the mirror. The emerald gown fit perfectly, making her skin glow. Charlotte had helped with her makeup and hair, turning her practical ponytail into soft waves that framed her face. "There," Charlotte said with satisfaction. "Now you look the part." "Thank you," Ariel said sincerely, "but I'm still terrified." Charlotte squeezed her hand. "Just remember, you have as much right to be there as any of them. More, actually, since most of them are terrible people with good pedigrees." When the car arrived, Ariel took a deep breath and made her way down the stairs. Grant was waiting beside the black town car, handsome in his tuxedo. When he saw her, his eyes widened, and for a moment, he seemed at a loss for words. "You look," he finally managed, "absolutely beautiful." "Your sister helped," Ariel admitted. "She thought I needed armor." Grant laughed softly. "That sounds like Charlotte." He offered his arm. "Shall we?" The drive to the country club was quiet, both of them nervous in different ways. As they approached, Ariel could see camera flashes outside. Local press documenting the arrivals of Charleston's finest. "We don't have to do this," Grant said suddenly. "We could go somewhere else. Anywhere." Ariel looked at him, surprised by the vulnerability in his eyes. This wasn't just about her discomfort. He was nervous too. "No," she said with newfound determination. "Your family hosts this event. It's important. We're going." Grant smiled, relief and admiration in his eyes. "Then we're going together." The moment they stepped out of the car, the whispers began. Ariel felt the weight of curious stares as Grant guided her through the entrance with his hand at the small of her back. The ballroom was spectacular. Crystal chandeliers, white floral arrangements, string quartet playing softly in the corner. At the far end, Eleanor and Richard Whitmore greeted guests in a receiving line. When Eleanor spotted her son with Ariel, her practiced smile faltered for just a second. "Breathe," Grant whispered to Ariel. "You belong here." They made their way through the crowd toward his parents. Eleanor recovered quickly, her society smile firmly back in place. "Grant, darling, you're late." Her eyes flickered to Ariel. "And you've brought a guest." "Mother, father, you know Ariel Vaughn," Grant said firmly. Richard Whitmore's eyebrows rose slightly. "The housekeeper." Ariel felt her cheeks burn, but Grant's hand remained steady at her back. "Actually," he corrected, "Ariel is my date this evening." The emphasis on the word date was unmistakable. Eleanor's smile grew tighter. "How unexpected," she said. "If you'll excuse me, I need to check on the auction items." As his parents moved away, Grant turned to Ariel. "I'm sorry about that." "Don't be," she said. "I knew what I was walking into." Throughout the evening, Ariel felt the curious stares and heard the whispered comments. Old Charleston money didn't mix with the help. It simply wasn't done. But Grant remained by her side, proudly introducing her to business associates and family friends. During dinner, they were seated at the main table with the Whitmore family. Charlotte gave Ariel an encouraging wink from across the table, while Helena maintained a chilly politeness that barely masked her disapproval. "So, Ariel," Eleanor said during the dessert course, her voice carrying just enough to be heard by nearby tables, "how long have you been cleaning houses?" The table fell, silent. Grant tensed beside her, but Ariel touched his arm gently. "I've been working for your family for 5 years, Mrs. Whitmore," she replied calmly. "Before that, I was putting myself through community college while caring for my grandmother." "How admirable," Eleanor said with a tight smile. "And what were you studying?" "Music education," Ariel answered. "I had hoped to teach children someday." "Ariel has an amazing voice," Grant interjected. "She could have been a professional singer." Eleanor's smile didn't reach her eyes. "How fascinating. And yet here you are folding our laundry." Before either could respond, the chairman of the hospital board tapped his glass, calling for attention. It was time for speeches and the charity auction. Grant leaned close to Ariel's ear. "I'm sorry, about my mother. It's all right," she whispered back. "She's just protecting what she values." "I have different values," he replied, his eyes holding hers. As the speeches began, Ariel noticed Vanessa Lancaster enter the ballroom with a tall, handsome man on her arm. The woman who had left Grant at the altar was exquisitely dressed in a red gown that commanded attention. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Grant followed Ariel's gaze and stiffened. "I didn't know she'd be here." "Are you okay?" Ariel asked softly. He looked at her, really looked at her, and something in his expression changed. "You know what? I am. Completely okay." The auction began, with items ranging from vacation homes to artwork donated by local artists. When a weekend at a mountain cabin came up for bid, Grant raised his paddle. The bidding was fierce, but he was determined, finally winning with a generous sum. "Congratulations, Mr. Whitmore," the auctioneer announced. "A weekend getaway in the Blue Ridge Mountains." As the evening progressed, Vanessa made her way through the crowd toward their table. Ariel felt Grant tense beside her. "Grant," Vanessa's voice was honey-sweet as she approached. "You're looking well." "Vanessa," he acknowledged coolly. "I'm surprised to see you here. Daddy's been on the hospital board for years," she shrugged elegantly. "Family tradition." Her gaze shifted to Ariel, curiosity and something like amusement in her eyes. "And who's this?" "This is Ariel Vaughn," Grant said, his voice warm with pride. "Ariel, this is Vanessa Lancaster." Ariel nodded politely. "Miss Lancaster, Vanessa's..." Perfect eyebrows arched. "Vaughn, the name isn't familiar. Are you new to Charleston society?" Before Ariel could respond, Grant answered for her. "Ariel works at my estate. She's also the most genuine person in this room." Surprise flickered across Vanessa's face, quickly replaced by a calculating smile. "How progressive of you, Grant." She touched his arm lightly. "We should catch up sometime for old time's sake." "I don't think so," Grant said firmly. "Those times are firmly in the past." Vanessa's smile faltered. She glanced between them, then nodded stiffly. "Enjoy your evening." As she walked away, Ariel let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "That was awkward," Grant surprised her by laughing. "Actually, it wasn't. Not for me." He looked at her with wonder. 3 months ago, seeing her would have gutted me. Tonight, I just feel nothing." The band began playing a waltz and couples moved to the dance floor. Grant stood and offered his hand to Ariel. "Would you dance with me?" She hesitated, glancing around at the elegant couples. "I don't know how to waltz." "I'll teach you," he promised. "It's just swaying with rules." On the dance floor, Grant gently guided her through the steps. His hand was warm against her back, his movements sure and steady. After a few tentative turns, Ariel relaxed into the rhythm. "You're a natural," he murmured. "I have a good teacher." She smiled up at him. As they danced, Ariel was acutely aware of the eyes watching them. Eleanor Whitmore's disapproving stare, Vanessa's calculated assessment, the curious glances of Charleston society. "Everyone's watching us," she whispered. "Let them," Grant replied, drawing her slightly closer. "I don't care what they think. Your mother cares." Grant sighed. "My mother will always care about appearances, but I'm done living my life for other people's approval." As the music ended, Grant kept hold of her hand. "Would you like to get some air? The garden is beautiful at night." They slipped away from the ballroom onto a moonlit terrace. String lights twinkled in the carefully manicured hedges, and the scent of jasmine hung in the warm night air. They were alone, the sounds of the gala muffled behind them. "I'm sorry about tonight," Grant said quietly. "The way my mother spoke to you, Vanessa showing up..." Don't apologize, Ariel said. I knew what I was getting into. Grant turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. Did you? Because sometimes I think I don't even know what I'm doing. Ariel looked up at him, her heart racing. What are you doing, Grant? Breaking all the rules I was raised with, he admitted. Crossing lines I never thought I would, and the strangest part is I don't regret it for a second. He reached up to touch her cheek gently. These past months you've been there when no one else was, not because of my name or my money, but just for me. Ariel closed her eyes briefly, leaning into his touch. It's my job. No. Grant shook his head. Your job is to clean the house, not to save the man inside it. But that's what you did, Ariel. You saved me. The moment hung between them, fragile and powerful. Grant leaned closer, his intent clear in his eyes. Before their lips could meet, the terrace doors opened. Eleanor Whitmore stood there, her expression cold. Grant, she said sharply, the hospital director is looking for you. It's time for the Whitmore family photo. Grant straightened, not releasing Ariel's hand. We'll be right in. The family photo, Eleanor emphasized, just family. The implication was clear. Ariel gently pulled her hand from Grant's. Go, she said softly. It's important. He hesitated, then nodded. Wait for me? We'll leave right after. As Grant followed his mother inside, Eleanor turned back to Ariel. This little game has gone on long enough, don't you think? Ariel stood straighter. It's not a game, Mrs. Whitmore. Whatever it is, it ends tonight, Eleanor said coldly. The Whitmore family has standards, traditions. Grant may be in some rebellious phase after the Vanessa debacle, but he will come to his senses. That should be his choice, don't you think? Ariel countered. Eleanor's laugh was without humor. My dear, do you really think you could fit into his world? The board meetings, the charity galas, the expectations. You don't belong here. The words stung because they echoed Ariel's own doubts. Maybe not, but I care about your son. The person, not the position. How touching, Eleanor said with a dismissive wave. I'll make this simple. If you truly care for Grant, you'll end, whatever this is. His position at Whitmore Industries, his standing in this community, all of it depends on certain choices, appropriate choices. You're asking me to break his heart to save his reputation, Ariel said quietly. I'm telling. You to know your place, Eleanor corrected. Go back to being the maid or find employment elsewhere. Those are your options if you don't want to destroy everything he's worked for. With that, she turned and walked back inside, leaving Ariel alone with an impossible choice. Inside the ballroom, Grant stood stiffly beside his family for photographs, his mind still on the terrace with Ariel. When the photos were finally done, he searched the ballroom for her, but she was nowhere to be found. Charlotte approached, concern on her face. If you're looking for Ariel, I saw her leave a few minutes ago. Leave? But I told her to wait. For me. Mum found her a ride home, Charlotte said grimly. What did our dear mother say to her, Grant? A cold feeling settled in Grant's stomach. Without answering, he strode toward the exit, pulling out his phone to call Ariel. The call went straight to voicemail. Back at the Whitmore estate, Ariel changed out of the borrowed gown and carefully hung it up. Tears threatened, but she held them back. What had she been thinking? That a fairy tale could come true? That the heir to the Whitmore fortune could really fall for the maid? She took out the note he'd left her. You are the only part of this house that makes it feel like home, and traced the words with her finger. Then she placed it in a drawer, out of sight. Eleanor Whitmore was right about one thing. Ariel didn't belong in Grant's world. Tonight had made that painfully clear. And if staying close to him would only hurt his family relationships and his position at the company, then the kindest thing she could do was step away. With a heavy heart, she sat down at her small desk and began to write a letter of resignation. When Grant finally arrived home, the house was dark and quiet. He went straight to the garage apartments, taking the stairs 2 at a time. His knock on Ariel's door went unanswered. Ariel, he called. Please, I know you're in there. We need to talk. After a long moment, the door opened. Ariel stood. There in simple pajamas, her face scrubbed clean of makeup, her eyes red-rimmed. "It's late, Grant," she said quietly. "We should both get some rest." "What did my mother say to you?" he demanded. "Whatever it was, she didn't say anything I hadn't already thought myself," Ariel interrupted. "Tonight was lovely, but it wasn't real. We're from different worlds." Grant stepped closer. "That's not true. What's happening between us is the most real thing I've felt in years." "And what exactly is happening?" she challenged gently. "What's the future here, Grant? Your family will never accept me. Your business. Associates won't respect you. The society pages will have a field day with the billionaire and the maid." "I don't care about any of that," Grant insisted. "But you should," Ariel said sadly. "It's your life, your legacy." She handed him an envelope. "This is my 2 weeks' notice. I think it's best if I find another position." Grant stared at the envelope, feeling as if the ground were shifting beneath him. "You're quitting? Just like that?" "It's for the best," she whispered, though her eyes told a different story. "I don't accept this," he said, pushing the envelope back toward her. "We'll talk tomorrow when we've both had some sleep." As he turned to go, Ariel called after him. "The auction item you won, the mountain cabin. Take Charlotte. Go away for the weekend. Get some perspective." Grant looked back at her, his heart heavy. "Is that what you want? Perspective?" "I think we both need it," she said softly. That night, neither of them slept well. Grant sat in his study until dawn, staring at the blank pages of his journal, unable to find words for the ache in his chest. Ariel lay awake in her small bed, Eleanor Whitmore's words echoing in her mind. "If you truly care for Grant, you'll end whatever this is." She did care for him, too much to be the reason his family turned against him, too much to watch him lose the respect of his peers, too much to see the light in his eyes dim when he realized that loving her meant losing everything else. As dawn broke over the Whitmore estate, both of them faced the same question from opposite sides of the property. How do you choose between your heart and what seems right? The morning after the gala, Grant sat in his office at Whitmore Industries, staring blankly at his computer screen. Board meeting minutes, quarterly projections, acquisition proposals, none of it seemed to matter compared to the envelope sitting on his desk. Ariel's resignation letter remained unopened, a physical reminder of what he stood to lose. His assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Your mother is here to see you, Mr. Whitmore," Grant sighed. "Send her in." Eleanor Whitmore entered, impeccably dressed as always, her expression unreadable. "You left the gala rather abruptly last night." "I wonder—" "Why," Grant replied, his voice cool. "What did you say to Ariel after I left?" Eleanor settled into the chair across from his desk. "I simply reminded her of reality, the reality of who we are, of your position, of her situation. You had no right." "I had every right," Eleanor countered. "I'm your mother. Everything your father and I have built, everything your grandfather established, it all depends on certain standards being maintained." Grant leaned forward. "Standards? Or appearances? In our world, they're the same thing." Eleanor's gaze fell on the envelope. "I see she made the sensible choice." "This isn't over," Grant said firmly. "I haven't accepted her resignation." Eleanor sighed. "Darling, this infatuation—" "It's not an infatuation," Grant interrupted. "I care about her deeply. You're still vulnerable after Vanessa. This has nothing to do with Vanessa." Grant stood frustrated. "For the first time in my life, I've found someone who sees me, not the Whitmore name, not the family fortune, just me." Eleanor studied, her son, her expression softening slightly. "And you don't think that's precisely why she's gotten close to you? Her single mother with limited prospects, suddenly in proximity to one of Charleston's most eligible bachelors." Grant froze. "What did you just say?" "About her being in proximity." "No. You said single mother. Ariel doesn't have children." A flicker of surprise crossed Eleanor's face. "She hasn't told you?" She pulled a folder from her designer handbag and placed it on the desk. "I had our security team do a standard background check. Ariel Vaughn has a 6-year-old daughter, named Melody, currently living with Ariel's aunt in Atlanta." Grant stared at the folder, his mind racing. A daughter? Why hadn't Ariel mentioned her? All those conversations, all those moments of growing closeness, and she'd never once spoken of having a child. There's more, Eleanor continued. The father is listed as unknown on the birth certificate. She was 19 when she had the child, dropped out of her music program. The background check shows she sends most of her salary to Atlanta every month. Grant sat heavily in his chair, trying to process this information. Why are you showing me this? Because you need to see the complete picture, Eleanor said gently. She's not being honest with you, Grant. Whatever you think is happening between you, it's built on omissions and half-truths. After his mother left, Grant sat alone in his office, the unopened folder taunting him. Part of him wanted to burn it, unread, to trust Ariel completely. But another part, the part still raw from Vanessa's betrayal, needed to know the truth. He finally opened it, scanning the contents quickly. His mother hadn't lied. Ariel did indeed have a daughter named Melody. There were school records, medical forms, even a photo of a beautiful little girl with Ariel's smile. The pain of this discovery wasn't that Ariel was a mother. It was that she hadn't trusted him enough to share this fundamental truth about herself. Meanwhile, at the Whitmore estate, Ariel moved through her duties mechanically, fighting back tears each time she remembered the gala and its disastrous ending. She kept expecting Grant to appear, to confront her about her resignation, but he remained at the office all day. When she returned to her apartment that evening, she found a package outside her door. Inside was the emerald gown she had worn to the gala, now dry cleaned, with a note from Charlotte. Keep it. It was always meant for you. Ariel hung the dress in her closet, a beautiful reminder of a night that could never be repeated. Then she called the number she dialed every evening. "Hey, Auntie May," she said when her aunt answered. "Can I talk to Melody?" Her daughter's excited voice came through the phone. "Mommy, guess what? I got an A on my spelling test." Ariel smiled, through her tears. "That's wonderful, baby. I'm so proud of you. When are you coming to visit? It's been forever." "Soon, sweetheart. I promise. Maybe sooner than we planned." After talking to Melody, Ariel made another difficult call. To a former employer in Atlanta, who had always said there was a position for her if she ever returned. The pieces of a new life were falling into place. A life away from the Whitmore estate, away from Grant, away from the impossible dream that had briefly seemed possible. The next morning, Grant still hadn't returned to the estate. Mrs. Peterson informed Ariel that he had called to say he'd be spending the weekend at the mountain cabin he'd won at the auction. "Alone?" Ariel asked before she could stop herself. Mrs. Peterson shrugged. "Didn't say, just asked me to pack his bag and have the caretaker ready the cabin." Ariel nodded, trying to ignore the ache in her chest. Perhaps it was for the best. A clean break would be easier than a prolonged goodbye. She spent the day cleaning the house with extra care, lingering in Grant's study, memorizing the details of the room where they'd shared so many quiet conversations. On his desk, she noticed his leather journal, usually locked away in a drawer. It was open as if he'd left in a hurry, a pen marking his place. Ariel knew she shouldn't look. It was a gross invasion of privacy, but something drew her to the pages filled with his handwriting. A single line caught her eye. "How do I tell her that I think I'm falling in love with her?" Ariel stepped back, her hand covering her mouth. The journal entry was dated the day of the gala. Before she could process this discovery, her phone rang. It was Charlotte. "Have you seen Grant today?" Charlotte asked, her voice tense. "No," Mrs. Peterson said. "He went to the mountain cabin for the weekend." Charlotte sighed. "He was supposed to call me when he arrived, but he's not answering his phone. The storm up there is getting worse. They're forecasting heavy snow and dangerous conditions." Ariel felt a chill of worry. "I'm sure he's fine. Maybe the reception is bad. Maybe." Charlotte didn't sound convinced. "The thing is, Grant isn't really the outdoor type, and after everything with you and the gala and our mother—" "What did your mother do?" Ariel interrupted. Charlotte hesitated. "She showed him some information about you, about your daughter." Ariel felt the blood drain from her face. "How did she know about Melody?" "Background check, apparently. Grant was pretty shaken up. Not about you having a child. But about you not telling him. Ariel sank into Grant's chair, her legs suddenly weak. I was going to tell him. I was afraid. I know, Charlotte said gently. And I think Grant would understand that if he'd give you a chance to explain. But he's hurt. And when my brother is hurt, he does stupid things, like driving to a remote cabin during a snowstorm. After hanging up, Ariel made a decision. She called Mrs. Peterson and got the address of the mountain cabin, then grabbed her coat and car keys. The drive would take over 3 hours, and the weather was turning, but she couldn't shake the feeling that Grant needed her. As she drove into the mountains, snow began to fall, light at first, then heavier. The roads became treacherous, forcing her to slow to a crawl. Night was falling by the time she reached the turnoff for the cabin, a narrow dirt road now covered in several inches of snow. Her old car struggled up the steep incline, wheels spinning in the deepening snow. Just as the cabin came into view, a rustic structure with lights glowing in the windows. Her car slid sideways and stalled. Ariel abandoned the vehicle and trudged the remaining distance on foot, the snow soaking through her shoes, the wind cutting through her coat. By the time she reached the cabin door, she was shivering uncontrollably. She knocked, teeth chattering, praying that Grant was inside and not out in this storm. After what seemed like an eternity, the door swung open. Grant stood there, his expression changing from surprise to concern in an instant. "Ariel, what are you doing here? You're freezing." He pulled her inside, quickly closing the door against the howling wind. The cabin was warm, a fire crackling in the stone fireplace. "My keycar got stuck," she stammered through chattering teeth. "I was worried about you." Grant guided her to the fireplace, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. "You drove all the way up here in this storm because you were worried about me?" She nodded, unable to speak as warmth slowly returned to her body. Grant disappeared into the kitchen, returning with a mug of hot coffee which he pressed into her hands. As Ariel warmed up, the weight of everything that had happened settled between them. Grant sat across from her, his expression guarded. "Why? Didn't you tell me about your daughter?" he asked finally. Ariel stared into her coffee. "At first because it wasn't relevant. You were my employer. Then, as we grew closer, I was afraid." She looked up at him. "Afraid it would change how you saw me. Afraid you'd think I was after your money for her. Afraid you wouldn't want someone with that kind of responsibility. You thought I was that shallow." "No," she said quickly. "I thought the world you live in was that judgmental. And I was protecting Melody too. She's been through enough disappointment. I couldn't let her get attached to someone who might not stay." Grant was quiet for a long moment. "Tell me about her." A smile touched Ariel's lips. "She's amazing, smart, kind, musical like me. She's in first grade now, living with my aunt in Atlanta while I try to save enough for our own place. That's why you send most of your salary to Atlanta." Ariel nodded. "Your mother told you?" "She did a background check," Grant admitted. "I'm sorry for the invasion of privacy." "I should have told you myself," Ariel sighed. I got caught up in what was happening between us. It felt like a dream, and I didn't want to wake up." Outside, the storm intensified, wind rattling the windows. Grant stood and added another log to the fire. "What are we doing, Ariel?" he asked softly. "What is this between us?" She looked up at him, finally ready to be completely honest. "I think I'm falling in love with you, and it terrifies me." Grant's eyes widened. "You saw my journal." "I didn't mean to. It was open on your desk." He knelt beside her chair, taking her hands in his. "Those words were true. I am falling in love with you. But I need to know that you trust me, with all of your truth, not just the parts you think I want to see." Tears filled Ariel's eyes. "I want to. But your mother made it very clear that someone like me could never fit into your world, that I'd ruin everything your family built." "My mother doesn't get to decide who I love," Grant said firmly. "Neither does Charleston Society or the board of Whitmore Industries or anyone else. But she was right about one thing," Ariel insisted. "I don't belong in your world." "Then maybe it's time for me to build a new world," Grant replied. "One where we both belong." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I've been doing a lot of thinking up here. About what I want, what's important." He handed her the paper. "I wrote this last night." Ariel unfolded it to find a business plan. At the top was written, "Whitmore Music Foundation, bringing music education to underprivileged children." "I don't understand," she said. "My grandfather believed business should serve the community, not just stockholders," Grant explained. "He set aside a trust that I control, separate from the family business. I want to use it to create a foundation that provides music education to kids who couldn't otherwise afford it." He took her hand. "And I want you to run it." Ariel stared at him in disbelief. "Me? Who better? You have the musical background, you understand what these kids need, and you have the heart for it." His eyes held hers. "It would mean a salary that could support you and Melody in Charleston, a chance to use your talents to make a difference." "And us?" she asked softly. "What would it mean for us?" "That's entirely up to you," Grant replied. "The foundation is yours regardless of what happens between us. No strings attached, but I hope—" He took a deep breath. "I hope you'll give us a real chance, not as employer and employee, but as equals." The realization of what he was offering washed over Ariel, not charity, but opportunity. Not a relationship based on uneven power, but one built on mutual respect. "I want to meet her," Grant said suddenly. "Melody. If she's part of your life, I want her to be part of mine too." Tears spilled down Ariel's cheeks. "You really mean that?" In answer, Grant leaned forward and kissed her gently. Against her lips he whispered, "I've never meant anything more." The storm raged outside, but inside the cabin, something new and fragile and beautiful was blooming. They talked through the night, about Melody, about the foundation, about their fears and hopes for the future. For the first time, Ariel shared everything, holding nothing back. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving a pristine blanket of snow across the mountains. They stood together on the cabin porch, watching the sunrise paint the snow-covered landscape in shades of pink and gold. "We should head back," Grant said, his arm around her shoulders. "There's a lot to do. Your mother won't make this easy," Ariel warned. Grant smiled. "No, she won't, but some things are worth fighting for." 2 weeks later, Ariel stood nervously at the Atlanta airport arrival gate, Grant by her side. When Melody came running, through the crowd her face lit up at the sight of her mother. "Mommy," she cried, launching herself into Ariel's arms. Ariel held her daughter tight, tears of joy streaming down her face. "I missed you so much, baby." After a moment, she set Melody down and turned to Grant. "Melody, this is my friend Grant. The one I told you about." Grant knelt to the little girl's eye level. "It's very nice to meet you, Melody. Your mom has told me what an amazing girl you are." Melody studied him solemnly. "Do you really have a big house with a garden like Mommy said?" Grant smiled. "I do. And I was thinking it might be nice if you and your mum came to live there. The garden needs someone to enjoy it." Melody's eyes widened. "For how long?" Grant glanced up at Ariel, his eyes full of love and promise. "For as long as you both want. To stay." Ariel knelt beside them, taking Melody's small hand in one of hers and Grant's larger one in the other. "Remember how I told you things were going to change? That we might have a new home?" Melody nodded, looking between the adults with a child's perceptive gaze. "Is he going to be part of the change too?" "If that's okay with you," Grant said gently. Melody considered this for a moment, then asked the question only a child would think to ask. "Do you make my mommy happy?" Grant looked at Ariel, his eyes saying everything words couldn't. "I certainly try to." "He does," Ariel confirmed, squeezing her daughter's hand. "Very happy." Melody nodded decisively. "Then it's okay with me." As they walked together through the airport, Melody chattering between them, Ariel marveled at how life could change so completely in such a short time. From cleaning the Whitmore estate to running a foundation. From hiding parts of herself to being fully known and loved. From raising her daughter from afar to bringing her home. To a real home with a future brighter than she dared to dream. 1 month later, The grand opening of the Whitmore Music Foundation made the front page of the Charleston Times. The photograph showed Grant with his arm around Ariel, Melody between them, cutting a ribbon on the new building. Eleanor Whitmore stood off to the side, her expression a complex mixture of resignation and grudging respect. The society pages buzzed with the news that Grant Whitmore was dating the former Maid, a scandal that would have once seemed catastrophic, but now barely registered with either of them. That evening, after the celebration, after Melody had been tucked into bed in her new room at the estate, Grant and Ariel sat together on the veranda, watching fireflies dance over the garden. "Happy?" Grant asked, his fingers intertwined with hers. "More than I ever thought possible," she replied. "Though your mother still looks at me like I'm going to steal the silver," Grant laughed. "She's trying in her way. She actually told me yesterday that Melody has excellent posture for a child." "High praise indeed," Ariel smiled. "She'll come around," Grant said, "and if she doesn't, it doesn't change anything between us." From inside the house came the sound of the record player, one of the old gospel albums Grant had bought that day months ago. Ariel laid her head on his shoulder, humming softly to the familiar melody. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "when Vanessa left you at the altar, everyone saw it as the worst thing that could happen to you." "It was," Grant agreed, "until it led to the best thing." He turned to face her. "You stayed when no one else did. You saw me at my worst and didn't walk away." "How could I not fall in love with you?" Ariel touched his face gently. "I stayed because even at your worst you were worth staying for." As the music played and the night deepened around them, they shared a kiss that felt like a promise. One, made not in the spotlight of a society gala or the drama of a snowstorm, but in the quiet certainty of two hearts that had found their way home. Because sometimes the most extraordinary love stories begin in the most ordinary ways, with someone who simply stays when everyone else has gone. The end.